Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we Masechtas Beitzah, daf Beis. We are beginning on Beis and Aleph, starting at the box, starting in the Mishnah. Beitzah shenilda b'yomtiv. So Beitzah is Aramaic, referring to an egg. Many people call this Masechtas Yomtiv, as you'll find out why soon. So when it comes to an egg that's born on Yom Tov, we have a machlokus. Beis Shammai omrim taychel, Beis Hillel omrim lo taychel. So we have a machlokus. Beis Shammai says you could eat it. Beis Hillel says no, you may not. So let's see Rashi. When it says an egg you're not allowed to eat, according to the opinion of Beis Hillel, it says bo b'yom. It's referring to on that day. And the Gemara is going to explain the reason, perhaps four explanations as to why one is not allowed to do this, according to the Shita of Beis Hillel. Then we have a second, totally unrelated machlokus. Beis Shammai omrim seor b'kazayis v'chametz b'chayseves. Beis Hillel omrim zev b'kazayis. Let's go straight into Rashi. What does this have anything to do with Yom Tov, specifically an egg born on Yom Tov? So Rashi says it really doesn't. It's just tlas mili havi mikuli Beis Shammai machmir Beis Hillel. Gabi Yomtiv, so Tanuhu Gabi Hadadi. They're all lumped together because we are lenient in these three areas like Beis Shammai. Not that we postulate Beis Shammai, but Beis Shammai, who typically is more machmir, in these three situations he is makel, so therefore we lump them together. So one of them has to do with the difference, as we saw at great length in Masechtas Pesachim, the difference between seor and chametz. Seor, which is yeast or sourdough, and chametz itself. What is the measurement? So we know that when it comes to halacha, we say that not only when it comes to seor, but also when it comes to chametz, it's a kazayas. That is the measurement. However, according to Beis Shammai, we see that Beis Shammai is actually lenient and says that when it comes to chametz, it's a larger measurement, which is chayseves. Rashi says tomorrow, say date. So this is a larger measurement than the kazayas, and therefore that's how he's makel. Again, we have to establish that Beis Shammai is makel. He's makel that he allows you to eat this egg on Yom Tov. He's makel now also, not when it comes to seor, he agrees by seor, but by chametz, he says that it's the larger size of the koiseves. Remember, the measurement of koiseves has also to do with, as we saw the last parak in Yomi, the amount a person eats on Yom Kippur is considered to be a violation of inui nefesh. So now we continue with the third unrelated topic, which is hashochet chayv oath. Now we know when it comes to a chay and an oath, as opposed to a behema, as we saw toward the end of Masechtas Chulin, that only when it comes to those animals is it necessary to do kisi adam. We cover the blood, there's offer on the bottom, the blood comes, and then we cover it up. That is the din of kisi adam. Now the question is, are you allowed to shech these things on Yom Tov? Well, for sarch oichel nefesh, it's allowed. You're allowed to prepare and shecht on Yom Tov. So what would be the issue? So let's continue the Mishnah. You could prepare this spit and cover it up. According to the Shita of Beis Hillel, he says no, you can't do simply just do the shchita unless you already have prepared this from muchan. You have to have this prepared earth already from before. Otherwise, it's not acceptable. Says Rashi, Yachbor b'deker, again, you can dig with a spade, so and so in laws. Okay, so Beis Shammai says you could dig even on Yom Tov with a spade to be able to do kisi adam. Beis Hillel says no, you can't shech until you has to already be prepared from before mibod yom, before Yom Tov. Moedim shim shachat shiachbor b'deker v'chasa. They hold that if you did it b'diavad, then you could dig with a spade and covered up. She'efer kira muchanhu. Seemingly disconnected, this is hard to read the sentence, it says that the ashes of a stove is muchan. Well, how is that connected to what we said before? The Gemara is going to explain. So now the Gemara asks the question that we were wondering. But Ma'askina, what are we talking about? What kind of tarnagolos are we referring to that it gave birth to a Beitzah on Yom Tov? If we're talking about that this tarnagolos was designated for eating, and again you're allowed to shechna on Yom Tov, therefore this tarnagolos in itself is not muksa, then my tamai to Beis Hillel. Why would Beis Hillel say it's an issue of eating the egg? Uchla de ifrasu. This is considered to be like food that was separated. So the Beitzah is like connected in a certain regard to its mother, to the tarnagolos. So therefore, since you're able to eat the tarnagolos and it's not muksa, so you should be able to eat the egg as well. Ella, it can't be referring to that. Rather, it's tarnagolos hamedas legadol beitzim. The purpose of this tarnagolos is not to shecht the tarnagolos, but rather it's so it should grow and give birth to more eggs. So my tamayu de Beis Shammai, muksahi l'chayra. Beis Shammai doesn't make any sense. This tarnagolos is totally muksa. It's not considered in your mind designated for food, and therefore it shouldn't be allowed. If you look in the Rabbeinu Chananel, muksa kol davar she'enu muchan nikra muksa. Interesting. Anything that's not already designated or prepared is considered to be muksa. Ucha de Ifras Taisa said, perish oichel hanifred min oichel, food that's taken from another food. So the question is, whether we're talking about a tarnagolos homedes l'gadol beitzim or tarnagolos homedes l'achila, it's going to be a problem either according to Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. So how do we understand this? So mamai kush, dilma Beis Shammai leisel humuksa. Maybe in fact we're talking about a case of a tarnagolos that its purpose is l'gadol beitzim, to have eggs. L'chayra is an issue of muksa, and that's the reason why Pashit Beis Hillel says you cannot eat these eggs. So maybe Beis Shammai doesn't hold of muksa. So in our thought process, we would say, even someone that says there's an issue of muksa, there's a greater issue, something which is noilad, something that was created that didn't exist before Yom Tov. Says Rashi, when it comes to muksa, maybe it's not an issue because anything that is fit for you to use, a person doesn't say in their mind, I'm separating myself from it. There's potential because it exists that I may use it. Abel says Rashi, Noilad loy havi yada denahavi daitile. Noilad is worse because it's not even around for you to potentially think that maybe I'm going to use it. So therefore, even if you maybe don't hold of muksa, still, maybe you still will hold of noilad. So my tamai to Beis Shammai. So according to Chayra, this egg is an issue of noilad. It's not an issue of muksa. And since it's an issue of noilad, then even Beis Shammai, even if he doesn't hold of muksa, he should still hold of noilad. Really, we're talking about, this is a situation where the tarnagolos, its purpose is to end up having eggs. And therefore, according to Beis Hillel, it makes sense. It's an Isser Muksa, it's Noilad, you can't eat that egg. How about Beis Shammai? Islay Muksa, Islay Noilad, Islay Muksa, Islay Noilad. So therefore, we're going to say Beis Shammai doesn't hold of Noilad. And that's the reason why he allows. Beis Shammai, Kreb Shimon, and Beis Hillel, Kreb Yehuda. Beis Shammai will be like the more lenient opinion in general of Rav Shimon, as we saw many times in Masechta Shabbos, and Beis Hillel is going to be the more strict opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So when we had the Machlokas Beis Shammai between Rav Yehuda and Rav Shimon, they argue about a davar she'en mischaven, but also Rav Shimon normally does not hold of many areas of muksa. There's some situations where he does hold of muksa, but otherwise, typically, he doesn't hold of it. So it must be Beis Shammai is of the lenient opinion like Rav Shimon. Mir Rav Nachman Hachi. But does Rav Nachman really say that this is so? That Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Yehuda? But Tanan, Beis Shammai Omer. Beis Shammai says in the following Mishnah, Magbihin Mial Shulchan, you can remove from the table Atzamais, bones, the klipin, and various shells. And Rashi says this is on Shabbos. And all these different things are, as Rashi says, Einon Ruin Lachila. They're not fit to eat. Ayin Taisus has a different shot. Taisus says, L'kachnili Shehim Ruin L'Michael Behema. They're fit for animal consumption. Regardless, according to the opinion of Beis Shammai, he says that a person is allowed to remove these bones. They're allowed to remove these bones from the table. Beis Hillel Amar Masalik es hatavla. Well, you should actually remove the entire table board, umanar, and shake it. However, but you cannot handle these bones directly. So we see that Beis Hillel is more strict than Beis Shammai. However, Amar Rav Nachman, Anu ein lanu el Beis Shammai k'Rabbi Yehuda uBeis Hillel k'Rav Shimon. Actually, we end up flipping over there in the Gemara. If you remember, the Mishnah gets flipped around the two shittas, and we say that Beis Shammai holds like Rabbi Yehuda, and Beis Hillel is the one who holds like Rav Shimon. So we find actually when it comes to dinim of Shabbos that Beis Shammai does not hold like Rav Shimon. Beis Hillel does not hold like Rabbi Yehuda. On the opposite. So how could we say over here that Beis Hillel holds like Rabbi Yehuda? So Amalach Rav Nachman. It depends if we're talking about Shabbos or Yom Tov. Gabi Shabbos, that Mishnah which is in Masechta Shabbos and it talks about the dinim of Shabbos, the Stam Tanik Rav Shimon. In that situation, we want Beis Hillel to fit like Rav Shimon because we paskin like Rav Shimon when it comes to Shabbos, that we're more lenient. Ditnan. How do we find elsewhere that we paskin like Rav Shimon when it comes to dinim of Shabbos? Ditnan. And this is also brought down, I believe, at the very end of this Masechta, that you can cut gourds for an animal, and also a nevela for dogs. So we see, what's the whole chiddush over here? It says Rashi. First of all, you can cut, Rashi says telushin, cut already detached gourds in front of an animal. We don't say it's tirchadul tzarech. So we don't say there's a din of it's a tirchadul tzarech that you're not allowed to cut down these gourds. And the chiddush is you can even, a nevela, you can cut in pieces for your dogs. V'apal pi, shnisabel b'Shabbos. Even though it actually died on Shabbos, the Ben Shemashis lo ha'isa imedes lachilas klavim. It was not fit to be given to a dog because it was not an nevela. Afil hachi shari. Nonetheless, Rav Shimon is mekel and he allows it. Why? Deleisli muksa b'Shabbos. He does not hold that there's an issue of muksa on Shabbos. When it comes to Shabbos, not there's no din of muksa b'chlal, but certain stringencies don't apply. And therefore, when it comes to an animal that dies on Shabbos, and it's a nevela, you could actually give it to your dogs. Even though it seemingly is an issue of muksa, it's not an issue. Hilkach, magbien mal shulchan demayr b'Shabbos, when we're talking about the removal of bones from your table, which is a Shabbos din, moikim Beis Hillel, we want it to be like, because we usually paskin like Beis Hillel, so we're going to say that's like Beis Hillel, the nemrik Rav Shimon, that he'll paskin like Rav Shimon, kehechad lo tashi hilchasa hilchasa, the kaimon halach kastam mishnah, the kaimon halach Beis Hillel. So since we typically hold like Beis Hillel, we want him to fit into the stam mishnah, and therefore, when it comes to Shabbos, we're very lenient when it comes to the dinim of muksa, and we'll pass like Rav Shimon, and therefore Beis Hillel is like Rav Shimon. Abel Gabi Yom Tov, the Ashkechan, the Stam Rabbi Yehuda. We're going to see when it comes to Yom Tov, we're more strict, and therefore we're going to hold when it comes to the dinim of Yom Tov like Rabbi Yehuda, who does hold a muksa. So let's continue in the Gemara. Again, now Mechamchan said the loin with Behemoth and the veil with Kalavim. Mukal and Beis Hillel Rav Shimon. So we said that that's like the shita of Rav Shimon. As we continue with Beis and with Beis, Gabi Yom Tov, this Tamlan Tanik Rabbi Yehuda, we end up holding more strict when it comes to Yom Tov. Ditnan, how do we see that we are more strict when it comes to Yom Tov? So the Mishnah says, Ein mevakin eitzim in a kairos. They are not allowed to split up wood from beams. V'lo min a kairos shenishbur b'Yom Tov. And let's say you have a beam that broke on Yom Tov. So the question is, you should maybe be able to use it for firewood or something. The answer is you can't. Why? Because at the time it was not for that purpose. It broke on Yom Tov. So Beis Hillel Rabbi Yehuda. So it's interesting. Beis Hillel kind of splits himself. On one hand, he holds like Rav Shimon on Shabbos, that doesn't hold a muksa, and yet when it comes to Yom Tov, he'll hold like the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda that does hold a muksa. So Michti, Man stamel masnisin, Rebbe. So Maishnag b'Shabbos the stamel Rav Shimon, or Maishnag b'Yom Tov the stamel Rabbi Yehuda. So instead of just asking by Beis Hillel, just stam the Tana Rebbe. It's hard to understand why does he not hold like Rabbi Yehuda or Rav Shimon? Why does he hold like both, but one on Shabbos, one on Yom Tov? So why is he more strict on Yom Tov and more lenient on Shabbos? So Amri, a very interesting psychological idea. Shabbos the Chamira. Shabbos in general, people are very strict. People have a lot of knowledge that they have to adhere to the Lamates Malachos. So since there's this view that Shabbos is strict, you can't cook, a person's not going to end up being mezalzel to degrade Shabbos. So Stamel and Reb Shimon, the Makel, he's able to be lenient and pass on Reb Shimon and be more lenient. And that's the reason why he said that when it comes to dinim of Shabbos, you're able to remove these bones from your table, and it's not an issue. Which is also the reason why you can cut up a nevela that died on Shabbos and give it to your dogs. However, Yom Tov, the keel, Yom Tov, which is more lenient, we have a lot of leniencies. Again, oichel nefesh, you'll have to prepare food, etc. So he was more strict to end up paskening like a more strict opinion of Rabbi Yehuda when it comes to dinim of muksa. As we see, that if you have a piece of wood that breaks, you can't use it for eights. So again, must be the way that we understand it is between Shabbos and Yom Tov. Okay, let's stop for a second. Let's look at question 5a. Ma hasvara the eish leimer the muksa the noilid chomer mishar muksa. So we said muksa, you could say just as long as there's something around uskachi inchi, a person's not going to divert their attention from it. However, noilid is something that at the time of Banish Moshes didn't exist and only came in existence afterwards. So how could you have had the havamin of the thought process of maybe wanting to use something that never existed? So by noilid, we're more strict. And I'm saying it doesn't matter. If you don't hold a muksa, you don't hold a noilid either. Well, Masvara 5b. The Eish Leimer the Chamer Yom Tov Mishabes Le'inyan Muksa. So he said because Yom Tov, because we're more keel, or it's more lenient in general, a person may come to Mezalzel it. And therefore, that's the reason why they had to be more strict and possibly the Shita Rabbi Yehuda. Weiter. So b'may kimta. So how have we established our Mishnah so far? And I did promise you this was going to be 4 answers. So we're really in the middle of the first. But Tarnagolos Hamedas Agadol Beitzah. And we say the Machlok of Beis Shammai Beis Hillel is talking about a Tarnagolos, and its purpose is to have eggs. I will chayr, it's an issue of muksa. Beis Shammai doesn't hold muksa. So Mishum muksa. See hachi adamifli b'Beitzah liflaku b'Tarnagolos. Why are you arguing about the egg? Why don't you argue about the chicken itself? Because the Tarnagolos is also muksa. Because it's not for eating. So the Tarnagolos is muksa. So why are you focusing on the egg? Why did the mention the egg? Talk about the Tarnagolos itself. The chicken or the egg. Talk about the chicken. The idea koichan the Beis Shammai. The reason is to show the strength of Beis Shammai. The b'noilid shari. That not only is the Tarnagolos mutter, it's around, but even the egg which wasn't around, and all of a sudden it was born, so as the din of noilid, he's even mater noilid. So it's a bigger chiddush to mater. So what? The mamuksa asri. Why don't we show that a greater chiddush of show the chiddush that even the din of muksa, forget about noilid is aser, but even muksa is aser. So even the Tarnagolos is aser. So we always answer, no. We always want to show the koyach of heter. it's easy to go machmir. You can always pass and go strict. The greatness is the kula, because in order to be able to be makel, you have to have justification or reasoning behind why you're being lenient. Okay, that's true. So Beis Shammai is lenient, and therefore it makes sense. The big chiddush is, wow, not only the tarnagolos is mutter, even the egg, which is noiled, is mutter. So, benifel b'tavayu. So what's the problem? Just mention both. Tarnagolos omeres agadol beitzim, he ubeitzah, so Beis Shammai amen toich, Beis Hillel amen lo toichel. Mention both. So instead of alleviating this whole problem, talk about the dinim of the mother and the egg, because undoubtedly, if you have this egg, someone may wonder, can I eat this egg? But someone may also ask, can I eat the tarnagolos? So why isn't it just mention it like that? Really, we're talking about a tarnagolos that's for the purpose of eating. So the question is, what do you mean? So what's the problem? It's not muksa. Why can't I eat this egg? It's just part of the mother. So our answer is, we're talking about a situation where Yom Tov falls out on Sunday. So you have Shabbos, and then you now have Sunday is Yom Tov. And the issue is Mishum Hachana. There's an issue of the fact that the item was prepared. So here the egg was prepared on Shabbos, and the next day on Yom Tov it's Asr due to Hachana. That's the idea of Hachana. Says Rashi, the Asr Beis Hillel. That's why Beis Hillel asks it, because of an issue of Hachana. The Ksava Rabba Kol Beitzah de Mesiyalda Inna. Any egg that's born today, Me'esmo Gomerla. It was finished yesterday, and therefore the egg was actually already finished and prepared yesterday on Shabbos, and therefore you can't take something which is already prepared for Shabbos for something on the next day. That's called Hachana. You can't do something from Shabbos to Yom Tov. You can't cook from Shabbos. Obviously, you can't cook on Shabbos. You can't do something from one day to the next, which is an issue of Hachana. So therefore, this is the problem with this egg. Esel Gomerlo was already finished. Barabal Tamed. Yamarabba Ma'adik said, what does the pasuk mean? That they prepared everything on Friday. Chol Meichin LaShabbos. It's telling you that's what you're supposed to do. On the weekday, you prepare for Shabbos. V'chol Meichin LaYom Tov. And on Erev Yom Tov, you prepare on that weekday for Yom Tov. However, in Yom Tov Meichin LaShabbos, in Shabbos Mechin LaYom Tov. You can't prepare from one day to the next. You're not allowed to. Of course, we have a din of having an Erev Tavshilin. The Gemara is going to discuss how that works exactly, especially if there's an issue of Hachana, the Rabbah. We'll have to discuss exactly how and why the Eruvi Tavshilin works. We'll have that again will be discussed at greater length at a later daf. But we're saying, based on this pasuk, that there is an issue of Hachana. You cannot prepare on Shabbos for Yom Tov. And therefore, that is the issue. Says Rashi, even though it wasn't prepared by me, it was prepared inside the Tarnagolos, still Aser. The Be'inan Kol Seudo Shabbos, Masudas Yom Tov, Shu Mezunaisav, Muzumanais, Muchanais, Meboid Yom Shilchol. They have to be prepared and made from before. It doesn't make any difference. Even if I didn't do it, even though it was Ben Hashemayim, nonetheless, there's still an issue of Hachana. Okay. Fine. So, therefore, that is the issue of the Hechinu. And Rashi says toward the bottom of Divrei Maschil the Hechinu, the Akshav Rachmana l'Seuda Shabbos, and the Torah considers the meal of Shabbos. She is manenu meboid yoim u'mechoil. That which was prepared needs to be done from before on a weekday. However, not from Yom Tov to Shabbos, not from Yom Tov to Shabbos or Shabbos to Yom Tov. The pasuk it talks about Shabbos. So Rashi says to be Yom Tov Nami Kori Shabbos. Yom Tov is also called Shabbos, and therefore it's an issue for Hachana for Yom Tov to Shabbos as well as from Shabbos to Yom Tov. Okay, so this is the second explanation why, according to the opinion of Beis Hillel, you can't eat this egg, because it's an issue of Hachana the Rabbah. Weiter. Bein Shabbos Machina Yom Tov Amar Le Abaya. So if the whole issue is that what happened the day before from Shabbos to Yom Tov, how about just a regular Yom Tov falls out on a Wednesday? So that means it was completed on a Tuesday. So the Hachana was from a weekday to a Yom Tov. That's allowed. our Mishnah doesn't talk about that. The Mishnah just seems to say you can never eat an egg that's born on Yom Tov. But maybe the only time, based on what we're saying, that you're not allowed to do it is only a Yom Tov immediately after Shabbos. However, if Yom Tov falls out in the middle of the week, it shouldn't be a problem. My answer is you're right, because there mishum Yom Tov achar Shabbos. So therefore, because of that, we say every time it's asur because of a gezerah if Yom Tov falls out on Sunday. So Shabbos Alma Tishtri, gezerah mishum Shabbos achar Yom Tov. Again, same question is Shabbos should be allowed because that means it was prepared on Friday and was born on Shabbos. Again, technically it's not a problem, but because if Shabbos would fall out after Yom Tov, let's say Yom Tov was on Friday, and that means it was actually prepared on Friday on Yom Tov for Shabbos, that's why it's asur. So Gazrinan, do we actually make such a gezerah? Is that true? But Tanya, but we learned, as Rashi says, Im Timer Havil Gzera, Dahanach Nemisyaldin Bioimehen Nami Enosuras. How do we see this? A shaykhet is the tarnagolos. A person shechs this tarnagol, umotzabo beitzim gemurais, and you find inside the tarnagolos completely full eggs. So mutaras la'ochan b'yom tov. The thing is, they didn't get born on Yom Tov. You shechted it on Yom Tov. So if you found these eggs, you're allowed to eat them on Yom Tov. V'im isa, if that's the case, that we make all these gezeres, we should be concerned the eggs that were born on the day, you're going to get confused. The ones that were born on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to eat. But the ones that when you shecht and are found inside the mother are mutter, won't you maybe not be able to make that distinction? And you may end up mottering the eggs that were already born on Yom Tov, which is problematic. We know that we are never geyser on something which is uncommon, because it's such an infrequent thing, it's not necessary to make all these enactments. So therefore, to find, even though it's possible that an egg could be found b'mei iman in its mother, it's not something which is common, and that's the reason why we're not geyser. But you're right, otherwise perhaps it would have been an issue, but except for the fact that it's a milsa delo shchicha. If you look in Taisus at the very bottom, it says Veish Leimer Dima'acher Deloy Nolda Alidikach Luchashiv Gomer, which is an interesting question. Whether does he actually argue with Hachan Rabbah that it is Gomer the day before the egg comes out? Ayin Taisus. So anyway, we now have a second explanation as to why Beis Hillel says you can't eat this egg. The first answer we said is because of Muksar Nailad, and the second has to do with Hachana de Rabbah. L'chayra, Beis Shammai doesn't hold of Hachana de Rabbah. What does that mean? That he doesn't paskin based on this pasuk? He doesn't hold of this pasuk? So again, it's a little difficult to understand what exactly is his mindset. So before we continue, and the Gemara is going to discuss this, but let's look at this Taisus. It says Tema Hoyel Hachana Deraisa. Since Hachana is a din deraisa, Hich Oifin Umavashlim Miyam Tov Shabbos. If you're not allowed, based on a pasuk, to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos, so v'chitem alidei eruv tavshilin, how is an eruv tavshilin allowed? L'chayra, that shouldn't be able to be oiker a din deraisa. So Tosfos says that we'll see later on, there's a din of hoyel. The imakli orchin chazle hashnami chazle. That the idea that you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos is because it's possible that maybe guests will come on Yom Tov, which is Erev Shabbos, and they may eat, and you'll need food, so therefore you're allowed to prepare for those people. And skipping another line, l'shayach behachana shein mechusar rak tikun ba'alma demikara havi chazile rak abi Beitzah shu davar chadash shel haisa ba'olam. So the idea behind this is if you hold of Hachana de Rabbah, which is in Deraisa, so the Eruv Tavshilin is matir because of Hoyel, because of this notion that you may end up having people to come, so you're just preparing extra food for them. And therefore, it's not really preparing food for tomorrow, it's preparing food for now, because it's possible that Orchim will come. Okay, Ayin Tosfos. Alright, so that's one explanation. We'll discuss again another idea of what Eruv Tavshilin is when we actually see that sugya. So far we have these two terutzim. Let's see the last two. We're concerned, we know that a person is not allowed to detach an apple from a tree. If it's attached to a tree, you can't pluck it off. So it looks a lot like that when you have this egg that fell off out of the tarnagol. So we don't want to allow it because otherwise it may look like fruits that fell off of a tree on Shabbos or Yom Tov, which a person's not allowed to eat. What's the whole issue of Paris and Nation as we continue Gimel and Aleph? Because what's the issue? You may end up going up the tree and detaching it. So he gufa gezerah, that in itself is a gezerah. It's not an issa deraisa of taking this fruit that fell off the tree. It's just because we're concerned, you eat this apple, like, wow, so good, let me grab another one. So then in itself, you'll end up violating issa deraisa of kaitzer. So if that's the case, he gufa gezerah, v'ana nikam nigzer gezerah, well, it doesn't make sense. This is a gezerah. We're not going to allow you even this egg, because if you do, then you are going to be concerned you may end up eating the fruit that fell off the tree. What do you mean? That's a gezerah in itself. That's a gezerah. We don't make a gezerah into another gezerah. Our answer is kul echad gezerah. Really, it's all considered to be one gezerah. We don't look at it as one separate from the other, but rather we say it's considered to be like all one gezerah, and therefore, as Rashi says, Mechal Gzeres Chachamim Haisa Shavhi Pri Hanoisher. Okay. Ayin Rashi. Fourth and final answer, Rav Yitzchak Gzer Mishum Mashkin Shizovu. There's an issue when it comes to fruit juices that flow out. Says Rashi, the Kaimlan Asurin Laboba Yom. Liquids that ooze out of a fruit, you're not allowed to drink that liquid on that day. As it says, Kiditnan Ve'im Yatsu Ma'atzman Asurin. If it comes out by itself, as is brought down almost at the end of Masechta Shabbos, it's usher. Who Beitzah nami demailahud shizavu v'yatzis memakam shahaisel belua. It's kind of like this liquid that is oozing out from its original source, and therefore, just like mashing shizavu, the liquids that come out of the fruit, you're now to drink that fruit juice on that day, on Shabbos. So too, when it comes to the egg. So again, mashim shazavu tamamai gzer shemi yischait. There's an issue that you may end up squeezing the fruit, and schita is a tolda of dash, of threshing. Well, that whole notion, you drinking this juice that oozed out by itself, is really only din d'Rabbanan. Shemi yischait, so gufa gzera, but on nekum nigzer gzera. It's a secondary gzera. So your answer is again kul echad gzera. This is all considered to be one gzera. So again, that is the fourth and final answer to this question. And now let's see a couple more questions. Mehem hatamim she'amru be'isr Beitzah shenoldu b'yom. What are the four reasons why one is not allowed, according to Beis Hillel, to eat this egg? Question 6. Either Muksab Noilad or Hacham Rabba, Gzera Paris HaNaishin, or the Gzera Mishum Mashkin Shizavu. Question TA7. Kaman Stam Rebbe Masnisin B'Muksa Kreb Shimon O Kreb Yehuda. Great question. So who does he hold like? Does he hold like the opinion of Reb Shimon, or does he hold like Reb Yehuda? So when it comes to Shabbos, which we're very strict, so he'll be more lenient than he possibly like Reb Shimon. On Yom Tov, where we're more lenient, so he's more strict, and he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, so again, on Shabbos we hold like Reb Shimon, and on Yom Tov we'll hold more strict like Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, question TB9. Ma hasvar al-hachmer b'muksa d'nayil mishar muksa, which we said already. Ma hasvar al-hachmer b'muksa b'yom tov b'muksa Shabbos, which we said already. Adkan.